Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Post. I'm Sid Rosenberg for OpenSports.com and the NationalFootballPost.com. Week 3 of the NFL season is on the horizon. So to help you get your fantasy lineups all set, let's welcome in the great, and I mean great, fantasy expert at NF Post, Joe Fortenbaugh. Joe, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well, Sid. How are you?
I'm doing great. How can I be doing badly? I'm wearing a Giant jersey and we're 2-0. I mean, come on. Joe, 2 weeks down, there's a handful of players out there that were rated very high but have struggled a little bit here out of the gates. Matt Forte was at least a top 5 pick in most drafts. He's struggling in Chicago. Steve Slayton, a late first rounder, struggling in Houston. Should we be worried about some of these guys or chopping on the bit to get these guys in the lineup now?
I think Forte is the type of guy that right now you want to get him in the lineup and you're going to feel very confident. We've been recommending over at the National Football Post, try to trade for Matt Forte. Has an excellent upcoming schedule the next few weeks. He's at Seattle this weekend. We all saw Frank Gore run for over 200 yards against them last week. He lit that defense up. Forte is going to get back on track this weekend. Then he's got Detroit. He's got a bye. Then he's got the Falcons and Cincinnati. It's a great lineup for him coming up. Forte's definitely a buy. Get him back in the lineup. He's a solid start.
All right, Joe, there's a receiver that also fits into the category we're talking about, not so much because of the defenses that he's faced, but Brandon Marshall just was not ready, even admitted he didn't know the playbook in Denver. What about Brandon Marshall?
Well, Brandon Marshall got off to a slow start. You know, he was suspended by head coach Josh McDaniels through the preseason. They got a new quarterback in Kyle Orton who started the year with the fractured finger and the open dislocation. Tough start for them to get on the same page, but I think we're going to start to see him develop as the season goes on. What people need to remember is Marshall's in the last year of his contract, and he's looking for the big payday. So he has every motivation to be out there right now making plays. As him and Orton tend to get together a little bit more, I think we're going to see much more production out of Brandon Marshall. His stock value right now is so low that if you could virtually trade him for, someone at the bottom of your roster. So he's got the talent. We've seen it before. He's a Pro Bowl caliber player. He's going to come around.
All right, Joe, those are 3 starting caliber players, but who might be ready to come off the bench this weekend to help fantasy owners? Some guy off the bench, a Rashard Mendenhall in Pittsburgh, a Jacoby Jones, somebody like that.
I think you hit the nail right on the head right there, Sid, with Rashard Mendenhall from Pittsburgh. Right now, the Pittsburgh running game really needs to get things going. First 2 weeks, they're in the bottom 10 in rushing in the league. They have a below-average offensive line, and that is part of the problem. But they really need to get a ground game going if they're going to be able to effectively throw the ball down the field. I think what Pittsburgh's realizing right now is that Parker is not the guy. He's a little bit older. He's a little bit slower. He'll be 29 years old this year. Mendenhall's the first-round pick from last season. He was injured, so he only played in the 1 game last year against Baltimore. But I think he's the guy that gives him the best opportunity to make plays in the ground game. Look for Rashard Mendenhall in the upcoming weeks to start to take more of the load and possibly become the outright number 1 back in Pittsburgh.
How about that? It's a short choice, too, the youngster in Dallas. Barber's a little nicked up. You got Felix Jones, but another guy to keep an eye on. Now, the quarterback position, Joe, outside of Drew Brees, has been pretty unpredictable early on. We've seen up and downs from Matt Schaub, good week, bad week, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady. What's your best advice to those owners looking for quarterback help?
Well, it depends on how many teams are in the league that you play in, but I think there's a few guys out on waivers that in a lot of situations, guys might not like them, but they're effective. Byron Leftwich is one guy. In terms of NFL production, I know a lot of people look at him, they talk about the slow release. Tampa is 0-2, but you got to remember, only Tom Brady has thrown more passes in the first 2 weeks of the season than Byron Leftwich. He's putting up touchdowns, he's putting up fantasy points. It might not look pretty, but he has been effective to date. He runs into your New York Giants this week, Sid, so that could be a problem, but Leftwich does throw the ball. Tampa tends to trail a lot in football games, so they're going to be throwing for 4 quarters. So I think Byron Leftwich is a somewhat serviceable quarterback that might be able to get you through a few weeks.
All right, Joe, it's fantasy pick'em time. I'll give you 2 guys. You tell me who to start. Let's start at quarterback. Matt Schaub with Houston or Jay Cutler with the Bears?
Oh, tough matchup. The Bears go to Seattle. I would, however, lean towards Matt Schaub. They're going to be throwing. They play Jacksonville this week. Cutler looked good, very good last week against Pittsburgh, but I do think that in Seattle they might be able to get up early, keep the ball on the ground, play it conservative. Schaub's got the open offense. The defense has trouble slowing people down. I like Matt Schaub.
Running back position, Larry Johnson of the Chiefs versus the Eagles or Julius Jones of the Seahawks against the Bears?
Very tough pick. I'd probably lean towards Larry Johnson in that situation. He's going to see more carries than Julius Jones. The Eagles are a very physical defense. I think both guys are going to have a really rough time finding yards this weekend, but I'd give the edge to Johnson because he should see more carries.
All right, Joe, Ryan Grant of the Packers against the Rams or Thomas Jones of the Jets against the Titans?
I'm going Ryan Grant with the Packers. The Rams are a very soft team to play right now. 0-2. They've been struggling in all phases of the game. Ryan Grant's on a very explosive offense. Yes, the Green Bay offensive line is banged up right now, but Thomas Jones is running into the second best rushing defense in the league in the Tennessee Titans this week. I'm going with Ryan Grant.
Two Raven running backs against the Cleveland Browns. Do you play Ray Rice or Willis McGahee off the good game?
Both of them are going to have good weeks. Cleveland's had a lot of trouble this year slowing down the run game. They're one of the worst run defenses in the league. We all saw what Adrian Peterson did to him in week 1. Buck Holter and Noshawn Marino from the Denver Broncos were all over him for 150 combined yards last weekend. It's tough because McGahee tends to get the goal line carries. I'm still going with Ray Rice. I like his potential. I think he's a guy that can bring up a lot of yards. Might struggle to find the end zone. I'm leaning Ray Rice.
Joe, last one, wide receiver Justin Gage of the Titans versus the Jets or Chad Ochocinco versus the Pittsburgh Steelers?
It's a tough matchup for Ochocinco against the Steelers, but Carson Palmer and the Bengals are going to need to throw the football. Gage is a pretty good option as a wide receiver 3 in a lot of fantasy leagues, but not the type of guy you can rely on for consistent numbers. I see the Bengals down in this game and needing to throw the football. I'm going with Ochocinco.
Joe, as always, a spectacular job. Thank you so much. We'll see you again on Thursday for more fantasy coverage right here on the Fantasy Football Post. A tremendous job, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sid. Enjoy the games this weekend.
You got it, pal. You can also follow Joe at Joe Fortenbaugh on Twitter for more great fantasy updates. For Joe Fortenbaugh, I am Sid Rosenberg, and as always, enjoy the football.